Today we are diving into more of the shoulda, coulda, and the wouldas when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens. Now, I know we have had a pretty heavily focused Habs-related show so far today on the program, and I swear to goodness gracious, it's just like that because there are a number of Canadiens-related topics that I've found and that I wanted to talk about, and that includes this video right here. Because today what I wanted to do was respond to a tweet that was posted by NHL Rumor Report that cites what Anthony DeMarco said on Daily Faceoff earlier on the weekend. Take a look at this failed Montreal Canadiens trade that almost went down at the trade deadline, but ultimately did not. Anthony DeMarco said on Daily Faceoff, according to sources around the trade deadline, the Montreal Canadiens did attempt to unload Patrik Laine in a deal to acquire a defenseman. The compensation was not enough for the other team to bite on. Now, before we analyze that, I wanted to look at this top reply from Smog is bored at the Smorgasbord. Sources around the trade deadline, quote-unquote. And then he shares them 3 months later. Skull emoji times 5. And yeah, I love the irony that is being pointed out here with this tweet, like, hey, yeah, we had sources at the trade deadline that said this, that said that were indicating that this trade could have happened. They were talking about how these talks were going down, but let's not reveal any of that until the season actually ends. Let's not reveal that until the draft. Like, let's hold on to all this information and not speak about it for years and years. And, you know, this happens all the time with NHL rumor reporting and trade speculation and whatnot. We always see insiders talk about stuff that happened months ago or years ago. It's always like that, and I think it has to be like that so that both the players and the teams are protected, and of course, this also helps the relationship between the media people and the sources that leak information to them. It's an entire business after all, right? But to hear the fact that the Montreal Canadiens were close to trading away Patrik Laine, and that they did actually have plans to do it, it does get me asking a few questions as well. Firstly, DeMarco's update said that Montreal was not willing to increase their compensation in order for the trade to go through. And what essentially that means is the trade would have been something along the lines of Montreal sends away Patrik Laine and a draft pick to another team, most probably for a good defenseman, a defenseman that would actually help out the Montreal Canadiens in their 2026 Stanley Cup playoff run. However, the value that the other team would be receiving would be in the draft pick alongside of Laine. It would have to be Laine and, let's just say, hypothetically, a first-round pick for a legitimately good defenseman coming back. Or heck, maybe it's Laine and a second for a defenseman that's not really amazing, but is serviceable and he could be a good number 6 guy. Or maybe Laine and a third for a extra depth defenseman caliber player. Something along those lines. Maybe the value isn't exactly what it would be in real life, but I'm just hypothesizing here. DeMarco's update essentially said that Montreal was not willing to up the trade value of the draft pick, and thus the trade never went through. Montreal was pinching a little too much on the draft picks that they had, and from that perspective, it becomes a little bit frustrating as a fan who has watched this saga unfold, because it's like, hey, wait a minute, Montreal would be trading away Laine in this trade, right? That's an $8.7 million contract. That's a lot of money, and if you freed up that dollar amount, then you could really open up options for your team acquisition-wise with that extra cap space. I mean, you think about it like this. If Montreal was getting back a player, a defenseman, in a Patrik Laine trade that would be making the same amount of money as Laine, then okay, that defenseman is probably a really good one, and so you would need to shell out a pretty juicy draft pick to make that trade work. If Montreal is getting a defenseman in return who is not the same dollar amount as Patrik Laine, well, then there's still value, because not only are you getting a guy who could probably help you out and actually play, but you're freeing up the space. And either way, Montreal would be standing to benefit from this trade situation. I do also wonder, if the Canadiens were able to free up that money, what direction could they have gone down elsewhere at the trade deadline? You know, we've had these conversations throughout the course of the past few weeks, but the Montreal Canadiens, they made a trade for Philippe Danault before the Christmas break. They then went out there and tried to make some other moves, but they didn't really add anybody. What if they added a Robert Thomas? What if they pulled a rabbit out of their hat and they added some big name, nobody was expecting it type of guy onto their roster? What if a Jordan Kyrou was added to Montreal? What if an Elias Pettersson was sent over to Montreal? What if, I don't know, Mason McTavish or whomever else was a Montreal Canadien? What if they went for the guys that actually did get moved around at the trade deadline, which, I'm going to be real, this year's trade deadline in 2026 was really, really bad. I mean, Nazem Kadri was the biggest guy, right? Braden Shen also acquired. What if the Canadiens got one of those guys? They would have been so much better. Yes, they made the third round this season. That was awesome. But what if they had more? What if they just traded away Laine and they disregarded whatever first round, second round, whatever round pick was needed in order to make that trade actually work, in order to get a D-man and then open up the space to get a Nazem Kadri or what have you? Montreal could have genuinely given a bigger fight to Carolina if they just had a better team. And having Laine sitting in the press box for $8.7 million a year definitely doesn't help. So I wonder what the direction was for Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton here, and I also do wonder at the same time, had they been given a chance to redo the trade deadline, if you gave Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes a time machine and you told these guys, hey, your team's going to make the Eastern Conference Finals, they'll get smoked, they'll lose really badly to Carolina, they're not going to have a dying fight left in them by the time the season is over, but they'll make it to the third round. If you told them that at the beginning period of March, would Kent Hughes and Jeff Gorton be more aggressive in shopping away Patrik Laine, getting that contract off the books, and afterwards making a trade for another center? Would it not make them push harder to make the team better now, if you give them that confidence that, hey, the team is firstly good enough to make the third round, and secondly, they do make the third round, even without any serious acquisitions? Philippe Danault, pretty great acquisition, but he's not a top six guy, generally speaking, on a playoff contending team. I know he was a first-line guy when Montreal made the finals 5 years ago, but still, it's a really interesting philosophical debate when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens, and I want you to let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this Habs Laine failed trade situation. I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign 9, and bye.